Welcome back. So this is the third video of the video series on data manipulations and data transformation. So today we're talking about select. So if you have not watched the first video, I'll link you to that in the video description below, but please go and look at it. Otherwise, you will have a little problem understand the data structure and how to initiate with the data over there. So today we are talking about select functions in the dplyr group libraries, stuff like that. Okay, so for filter function is actually trying to filter out the rows that you are interested in. And in select, however, you're selecting the columns. That's basically it. So just to use into the first example that we see over here. So if you select flight, year, month, day, you realize that just like every other function that we have, the first parameters is always the data frame, and the second, third function, fourth function is just the column that you want to include when we are talking about the select function. So you can also rewrite this in a piping format, which is flights and select month, year, day. Okay, so you can also write it in this format if you want to pipe the data. The two of them will result in exactly the same output. It's just that one is putting the data frame within the function itself, and the other one is actually taking a piping functions. Okay, so you can also select from a range, which in this case is year to day. It's just that if you want to select, let's say, a lot of number of columns, you don't have to type individual one out. You can say 2 to the n, so you can actually delete the first column in the case, or the fifth column to the seventh column, or to the 11th column. So this is particularly useful, of course, when your data size is a lot bigger. So we only have 19 columns here, so it's not a big deal to type everyone out. But in a lot of situations, you might have hundreds or even thousands of columns when you're working with actual big data and so on and so forth. So you can also remove certain column that you're not interested in. In that case, it might be an empty column. It might be that things that you do not want to include in, or you can just put in the column with calculations that are completely empty. You want to remove completely empty column. So this is also the way you can do, which is just put a negative sign in front of it. That will remove the name of the column. So in the R fashion, you are not allowed to have the duplicate columns name in the data frame. Otherwise, it will give it an error. So you should never have the problem of they don't understand which column to remove when you put a single name in. And yes, I'm wearing my glasses because I can't really see the screen without it. Okay, so instead of actually just putting the full name of the column, you can also use a little bit what we call a helper functions. In this case, you can use start with, which is all the name that start with certain things. In this case, if we go back here, you can say something like let's say arrival. So arrival has time and arrival delay. So if you want to select two of them at once, you can use the select function, start with arrival, ARR, and that should select that column directly. You can also use end with, so this will be useful if you want to look at time. So the time, the scheduled arrival time, as well as the departure time, and so on. So that will actually select all the column that ends with a certain string, and of course contains, matches, and num range is fairly straightforward. It's just how do you want to select based on the subset of the string, or you want to have a certain calculations using regular expression. So we'll have another video on regular expression. There's a lot of things inside that. Okay, so lastly, of course, we have num range, which is the same thing. It's just 1 to 3, 5 to 7, 11 to 25, and so on and so forth. So in this case, we can also do something like a rename, which is renaming the column into the other name. So if I put tail num2, you should actually rename that into tail num2. Yeah, same thing. So we're gonna rename it back so that we don't ruin our calculation on the same thing below. So no, it doesn't. Oh yeah, so I didn't pipe it over, so it's fine. So I did not save it into the parameters. So in this case, they will just print out, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. So you can also rename the column this way, just to recap before we forgot about it. So the lastly is this function called everything. So if you just want to include like time, hour, air time, and then you want to include everything in the back, everything is the one that you will be able to use directly, and you just easily, so instead of doing things type one by one, or remember how many columns you have, you just put in everything. So what do they do? Because you still see that it's still 19 column here, everything will actually calculate everything else beside the time hour and the air time. So you don't have to think about how many do I have and do I have duplicate columns and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is basically select. Yeah, kind of straightforward. Let's go into exercise. So with every of my video above, there's always the exercise attached in the video description down below, which will bring you to a website and a Google document you should be able to copy paste. Remember, this is R Markdown, so if you want to copy paste the code from the Google Doc here into RStudio, remember to create a new R Markdown notebook and not a normal R script. Otherwise, it will not work. Okay, so let's look at the exercise over here. The first one is brainstorm as many ways as possible to select a departure time, departure delay, air time, and a delay. So there's a countless way of doing it, just like everything else in R. I'm just gonna put three of the example over here where we can use select departure time, departure delay, arrival time, arrival delay. So this is straightforward. I want everything, and that's kind of it. So I can also use start with departure time, start with arrival. So this will actually result in a little bit more data that I want. And oh no, it's perfect. No, actually, oh yeah, it's perfect. So arrival and departure will only select these 4 columns. So it's perfect, it's beautiful. So let's actually look at the third one that I do, which is select contains time and contains delay. So of course, this will have a little bit of problem because the parameter that I use are not specific enough. So we might want to do a little bit of regular expression over here, and maybe just add on underscore, and we'll see if it works. Well, it might not. Let's see. Yeah, it might not. It has a little bit more things that is included in the situation. So the schedule will be here. So we might want to reduce schedule as well as the air time, and so on. So that will do with regular expression. But in this case, I would suggest you to try to think of something else that you could be able to. In this case, it could be number range. It could be include column 5 to 11, but exclude 5 to time. So I can also do this and then use another select to deselect the schedule, something else. So we'll leave that up to your imagination. So what would you include? So let's go to the second question. What happens if you include the name of the variable multiple times in the select call? So in this case, I don't really want to run this because it actually crashed my RStudio when I ran it last time. I'm not too sure what happened. In theory, you should not select it multiple times. You just select it one time and display that one column. But when I ran it last time, my RStudio just not responding and I have to reset the whole thing. So I'll leave it here, but you run it at your own risk, basically. So the third one is, what does the one-off function do? So why might it be helpful in conjunction with this vector? So one-off function, I didn't say anything about one-off function, isn't it? Interesting. I have no idea how this thing works. I'll come back later. Okay, I'm back. So the one-off function is actually a retired, more precise function of any of or all of selectors. So what they do is basically the same thing as the OR syntax that we talked about just now. So as long as we select, as long as the column name is equals to anything inside this vector. So the vector that we do is the year, month, day, departure delay, and arrival delay. So if we can use one of these select one-off variables, so it should actually select everything that is exactly the same. But the good thing is that if I type some nonsense here, it will actually not give any errors. So you can have much larger vectors, and as long as there's a certain matches, it will actually be to be selected. But anything that is nonsense in the vector would not directly affect the result and would not give it an error. Okay, so let's go to the last question over here. So how does select help us deal with case by default, and how can you change that by default? So in this case, I don't think they are case sensitive, because if I put time here, it's perfectly okay. So if I do DEP here, departure, it's perfectly okay. So they don't actually deal with uppercase and lowercase, and you can actually use either one and it should be fine, basically. So that is the video about the select functions. So we have done a few things. We have done filter, we have done arrange, and we have done select. So next video we're going to go into the mutate, which is actually how to create a new column based on the certain calculations. So we'll see you in the next video. So bye.